Well, it's a great opportunity to be here with Ariane Wing, Steve Banister, Gail Holiman, and Jack Schwartz from the Carnegie Museum of Kings County. And as most of you know, they are having an exhibition called Kings County's Asian Experiences. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having us.
So, Ariane, can you tell us a little bit about the exhibition? This is part one of two parts. It opened recently and will run through July. What can visitors expect to see in phase one?
Well, Steve and I were in charge of the Chinese part of the exhibition, and we took the Chinese history from the 1870s all the way up to 1946. There was a Chinese community here in Hanford before Hanford was even incorporated. So there's a lot of history. For many years, I've been a member of the China Alley Preservation Society, so we have so many stories to share. On May 12th, 2021, our Taoist Temple Museum was heavily damaged by arson, and we haven't been open since. And so it's just such an honor to be able to share all of our stories and our artifacts with the public again. We've tried to replicate the main room of the Taoist Temple altar, and we have personal history stories, one of which I'm kind of partial to because it's why I'm here, how my great-grandfather came here to Hanford and settled in China Alley. And there's been wing businesses in China Alleys for 4 generations. And so that one display I'm kind of partial to, although I love them all, is that one's kind of special to me.
So, Gail, this exhibition involves not only the Chinese history, but also the Japanese history, and I know you have a big part in it. What, from your standpoint of the exhibition, why is it important for visitors to come and see this exhibition, and what can they be expected to see?
Well, for one, before I started this project, I didn't, because our parents never talked about the prior history and the influence of the Japanese community, I did not understand and appreciate and see the depth in which the Japanese community had actually built or established itself before the war. So I didn't understand how many businesses there were and why a lot of the people that were here before aren't here again. This exhibit shows you all the people that were here, the businesses that were there, the contributions the Japanese Americans made to the military, in which they were actually almost excluded from, if it not were from higher ups to determine that the Japanese would be a definite asset. So it shows the involvement of the community, and also shows during the evacuation after Executive Order 9066 that there were many, many families that were forced to move to Fresno and then be relocated out to Jerome, Arkansas. And from there, they could go anywhere else except for back to California for many, many years. And unfortunately, when you sit down and look at the numbers, only 30% of those people came back to Kings County, which is a very sad number. So when I was growing up, I didn't know a lot of the people that didn't come back, and a lot of the names I don't recognize. So the research had me understand that there's a lot of people that I didn't know, and I'm sure we only touched on a small surface of what there is, because our ancestors, my parents, grandparents, they aren't around to ask anymore. So all of this was just a lot of hard hours of research to uncover all these little gems that they told to somebody else years ago. And fortunately with the internet, it was a daunting process, but I was able to get some done.
So as you enter the gallery, I noticed one of the exhibits shows all of the, well, not all of the showed a great number of people that had served in the military, and they were sworn to secrecy. So a lot of those stories haven't been told.
Half of the board is Military Intelligence Service, and they were brought in to interpret maps, documents, interrogate prisoners. My father was part of that section, and they were sworn to secrecy until 1972, I believe, when the Freedom of Information Act came around. And even at that point, he didn't talk to us. He would talk to everybody else, but not to the family. The other half of the board is the 442, which fought the biggest battle was to rescue the Lost Battalion in Europe. But they fought a lot of the battles in Europe. They had 800 casualties to rescue 211 Texans. And 2 of those that were in that battalion came from Kings County.
Incredible stories for sure. So, Ariane, there are a number of displays in the gallery. Can you tell us a little bit about, let's say, for instance, the gambling room setup?
Well, the gambling room setup was very fun because that was a very colorful display. You could just feel the energy that the gambling brought to China Alley, and that's how they entertained themselves. The early Chinese pioneers, they entertained themselves by having all these gambling games, mahjong, pai gao, their card games, and the artifacts are displayed are all from China Alley gambling rooms or dens, whatever you want to call them. We wanted to bring one piece over that was the lookout bench, where there would be a bench placed in front of the gambling business, and the lookout was sitting on the bench. So when they saw an impending raid coming, they could push a button on the back of the chair, which rang a buzzer in the room, so everybody could put their cards away, and some of them could escape through the back alleys and the tunnels that led through another room. And just when the police came in, they were just sitting there drinking tea or just chatting. And so that's a fun display. And like I said, just the marks on the chips and everything, they're just fun old pieces to look at and think of if those pieces could talk, So, and the gambling also is what brought I'm going to say non-Chinese into Chinatown, because once the gambling opened up, everybody wanted to buy a lottery ticket. And I still, to this day, I have people stop me and tell me that their father or their grandfather used to play in the lottery. So it was a good pastime. It's also when they were building the Chinese school in 1922, which is located where the Temple Theater is now. All the businesses, including the gambling business, had to put up a percentage so that the funds were raised to build that building. So that is the first school in California that was funded by the lottery.
The LT Sue Herbalist display is amazing.
Thank you. That was also another fun one to put together, because all those herbs, everything was original in there. My Chinglish is sort of good, but I can't really read all the markings on the packages. So I had so many translators telling me what the herbs were on all the marked packages. But Dr. L.T. Sue, he was the first herbalist to come to the San Joaquin Valley, because one of the prominent businessmen, Su Chun-Ki, and we also have a display dedicated to him, his grandson was ailing, and he wanted to bring a Chinese doctor to do Chinese medicine for his ailing grandson, and he was healed, and word got around, and so he became a very successful herbalist. And then other herbalists, there must have been 6 or 7 different herb stores in Chinatown, and he was the first. But that was another reason non-Chinese came into town, because if the Caucasian medicine wasn't working, and pain will make you try anything sometimes, so they would come to Chinatown and see an herbalist.
Dr. Sue was also not only a very famous and local doctor, but as American medicine started to get more mainstream, he started to get hassled by the law enforcement of Kings County, and was arrested at least a dozen times. And each time he was arrested, he would get out on bail immediately, because all of his customers would bail him out. So finally, the judge told the prosecutors to quit arresting this guy. You're never going to convict him. He's just too popular.
We could be here all day talking about this, all these different displays. It's awesome. It's awesome. You're definitely going to have to come down and see it. Let's hit one more, and that is the actual temple display.
To be honest with you, Rob, that was a real tough one to put together, because most of our artifacts were heavily damaged or just completely destroyed through the arson or by the arson. And we had a few things saved, but we had to kind of cobble that room together to make it look as much as we could. I will tell you that a lot of the ones that survived, the artifacts that survived, are being in the hands of conservators, and that's really expensive. So we plan to do a lot of heavy fundraising to get that going. But one of the things that I'm really proud of in that the temple room. There's a couple. And there's a nice giant blown up picture of the interior of the temple in the 1880s. And that's always kind of fun to kind of just take a glimpse back into that era and that life. The other thing is Steve Banister, art major, made these exact replicas of some of the flower displays, and that took some work. So it's just, that room was a labor of love, and it was a little sad to put it together, but I think we did it justice. I think you can still feel the temple's presence, and that temple did not just serve for religious matters. It was also a meeting room. It was a school room. It was kind of a multi-purpose room, so it had many uses. We also have in that room a video called "The Last Temple" that was made in 1972, just when the Preservation Society was starting to be formed to save that temple. So you can see how the temple was built in 1882, and you can see from 1882 to 1972 how much it had been falling apart and how much it needed a Preservation Society to step up. And when you take a look at that picture, and those of you who remember what the temple looked like, it really came back to life, and we had so many tourists and people came in from all over, and school children, and it was just, I can't wait till we get back there. And I know that your mother was a pretty heavy-duty lead, tireless docent out there, so I'm not telling you anything you don't already know.
So, Gail, I know that the Buddhist Church has played a very important role in this exhibition, and their involvement has been so vital to the success of this exhibit. Can you share with us a little bit about how they've been involved?
Oh, most definitely. It wouldn't have had much of the material or the heart that it has. Originally, as us people in the Japanese community are very reserved, conservative, don't say a whole lot. And it took a lot of pulling and convincing, and all of a sudden the light bulb came on. Oh, could you use this? Could you use, yes, definitely. And the volunteers that came out to help set up the exhibits, that brought in the displays that we needed, that, actually helped to create the models once they saw what we were trying to do, was invaluable. Everyone stepped forward. It was a huge community effort by not only the church, just the Japanese community in general. And it was, without them, it wouldn't have been near as extravagant or as encompassing as it is now.
So the first part of the Asian Experiences exhibit covers the Asian influence just through World War II. And then the museum will be closed down for the month of August, and we're going to reopen in September through December with post-World War II. What kinds of displays, I know they're still being put together, but what kinds of things would visitors should look forward to in the fall?
We're still coming up with what the framework would be on that, because the Asian American community encompasses more than just the Japanese and the Chinese. And it kind of coincides with, as the other immigrants came in, the Filipinos, the Koreans, the Taiwanese, the Okinawans, were reaching out to those communities to see how much they have to contribute. The problem is a lot of, like, the Hmong and the Vietnamese, they left and they ran, so they don't have a whole lot. So we're trying to figure out what do they have, because I want them to be part of the experience, because they are part of our community.
So if someone would be interested in participating in Phase 2, how can they get a hold of you?
They can contact me, or they can reach out to Jack, and he'll put them in touch with me. Even stories are what we need, because we can create a storyboard and kind of meld them all together so the community can see that it wasn't easy for them coming over. So that I do have some feelers out, but we could always use, there's never enough feelers.
One of the things I'm most asked about regarding China Alley is, when are the lions coming back? Because our Moon Festival, our annual Moon Festival, it would have been our 40, I don't know. All I know is the Cal Poly lion dancers, when we first started, they were my peers. Now they could be my grandchildren. but anyway, so we were trying to plan to have, or we are working on having the Cal Poly Lion Dance team come down and visit, and we've made connections, and they, even as through the generations that we've gone through with the dancers, Hanford has a special place in their hearts, but they just loved coming to the Moon Festival. So it'd be nice if we could kind of coordinate something around then, and that's in the works.
So, Steve, getting back to you, I know that our love of history, our love of local history is very important, and we want to kind of share our stories with other people in the community. Why is that so important?
Well, Hanford has a very rich history, and especially for young people that weren't able to experience it, it's important that we explain that to them so they get a sense of place. I feel historic in a way now because I can remember drinking water out of the Carnegie Museum or the Carnegie Library's water fountain, which still exists today. When my parents would eat at the Imperial Dynasty, they'd have an after-dinner drink, and they'd tell me, "Go play in the alley. We'll only be another Greek or so." And all of the smells in that alley just fascinated me. And then as you got older and the library moved and the dynasty closed, you started realizing that, wow, that was history that doesn't exist anymore, and we need to tell it, and we need to tell it accurately so we don't get these false stories that didn't really happen. And so we're trying to really make sure that we get everything down correctly and that it's available for not only young people, but anybody that wants to know about the history of China Alley.
Jack Schwartz is the president of the Carnegie Museum of Kings County. And Jack, why is it so important for us to, as a museum, share the story of Kings County?
Our organization is focused on telling the histories of different segments of the county. Some of these stories have never been told, and we are stewards of the building, and we are trying to educate and preserve the history of the county through themed exhibitions. This particular one is amazing to me because not only do we focus on events over time, including the discrimination that the Asian communities had in the early 1900s, but also tying displays to the stories of what happened. One of the interesting displays that we have deals with the evacuation of the Japanese. And at that time, the Japanese literally had only a couple of days to leave what they had. And they owned no real property. That was not allowed. A lot of them rented houses or lived on houses on ranches and farms. And several local ranchers and farmers maintained everything for those families while they were forced, with basically the clothes on their back and a suitcase, to go to an assembly area and then an internment camp in this case, Jerome, Arkansas. The thing that is what we try and do is place our visitors in a position so they can try and visualize and experience the stories and try and understand the circumstances at the time. And this exhibition, this part one, is just an amazing, amazing step into history.
Jack, what are the hours of the museum, and when can people stop by and visit?
Our normal operating hours are Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, 1 to 5, though groups can also call and make appointments so that I can make sure that there's a docent available for the private tours. The admission is $5 for persons over 12, $2 for persons under 12, with a maximum of $10 per family. And we look forward not only to folks coming in, but also to having special events and group tours and school tours.
You can find the Carnegie Museum of Kings County on the web at carnegiemuseumofkingscounty.org and on Facebook and Instagram. And if you have any questions, feel free to stop by during operating hours or contact us through our website.